Hello, everybody. Um, I thought maybe for this read through that we would do something a little bit different. Instead of doing just a novel, we would do an actual just book. And this was a book that I thought was just excellent the first time I read it. And so I thought I'd read it through with you all. And the goal here is just to take some time and reflect on what's being said. You may or may not agree with everything said. I may or may not agree with everything said, but I think that this book's just an excellent book. It was written by a man named Philip Yancey, and it is called The Bible Jesus Read. And so we're going to start in chapter 1, which is called Is the Old Testament Worth the Effort? And it starts with a quote from a man named Abraham Herschel. It says, "Faith is not the clinging to a shrine, but an endless pilgrimage of the heart. Audacious longing, burning songs, daring thoughts, an impulse overwhelming the heart. Usurping the mind, these are all a drive toward loving the one who rings our heart like a bell." Let's start. My brother, who attended a Bible college during a smart alecky phase in his life, enjoyed a shocking group of believers by sharing his life verse. After listening to other, quote, pious Pharisees from Proverbs, Romans, or Ephesians, he would stand and, with a perfectly straight face, recite the verse very rapidly. At Parbar westward, for at the causeway, and two at Parbar. First Chronicles 26:18. Other students would screw up their faces and wonder what deep spiritual insight they were missing. Perhaps he was speaking another language. If my brother felt in a particularly ornery mood, he would quote an alternative verse. O daughter of Babylon, happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. Psalm 137:9. In his sassiness, my brother had quite ingeniously identified the two main barriers to reading the Old Testament. It doesn't always make sense, and what sense it does make offends modern ears. For these and other reasons, the Old Testament, 3/4 of the Bible, often goes unread. As a result, knowledge of the Old Testament is fading fast among Christians and has virtually vanished in popular culture. In a comedy routine, Jay Leno tested his audience's knowledge of the Bible by asking them to name one of the 10 Commandments. A hand shot up. God helps those who help themselves. Everybody laughed. But no one else could do better. Polls show that 80% of Americans claim to believe in the 10 Commandments, but very few can name as many as 4 of them. Half of all adult Americans cannot identify the Bible's first book as Genesis, and 14% identify Joan of Arc as Noah's wife. Now, just so you know, this book was written in 1999, so it is 21 years old at this point, but you can imagine that those stats have only increased. All right, continuing. More surprisingly, a Wheaton College professor named Gary Burge had found that ignorance of the Old Testament extends to the church as well. For several years, Burge had been testing incoming freshmen at his school, a premier evangelical institution. His surveys show that students who have attended Sunday school all their lives have watched innumerable episodes of VeggieTales and have listened to countless sermons cannot identify basic facts about the Old Testament. The experience of Barry Taylor, former rock musician and now pastor, suggests a reason. He told me, "In the early 70s, my best friend became a Jesus freak. I thought he was crazy, so I started searching the Bible in order to find arguments to refute him. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out why God was concerned with the bent wing of a dove, or why he would give an order to kill, say, 40,000 Amalekites, and who were the Amalekites anyway? Fortunately, I kept reading, plowing through all the hard books. When I got to the New Testament, I couldn't find a way around Jesus, so I became a Jesus freak too." I'm glad Barry Taylor made it to Jesus, but I recognize that he raises some good questions in the process. Why does the Bible spend so much time on temples and priests and rules governing sacrifices that no longer even exist? Why does God care about defective sacrificial animals, limping lambs and bent-winged doves, or about a young goat cooked in his mother's milk, and yet apparently not about people like the Amalekites? How can we make sense of the strange Old Testament, and how does it apply to our lives today? In short, is the Old Testament worth the effort it takes to read and understand? I have heard from missionaries in places like Africa and Afghanistan that people there respond immediately to the Old Testament for its stories of land disputes, water rights, tribal feuds, and arranged marriages relate directly to how they live now. But such customs are far removed from a Greek thinking sophisticate like the Apostle Paul, and much further removed from the average suburbanite living, say, in Tampa, Florida. And those of us in developed countries who pick up the Old Testament and simply start reading may feel boredom, confusion, or even outrage at the violence portrayed there. Jesus we identify with, the Apostle Paul we think we understand. But what are those barbaric people living in the Middle East several thousand years ago? What to make of them? Most people get around the dilemma by avoiding the Old Testament entirely. Or perhaps worse, they mine it for a nugget of truth that can be extracted and held up to the light, like a diamond plucked from a vein of coal. That technique can backfire, however. Remember my brother's life verses? I can think of one ironic advantage to the ignorance of the Old Testament. The man of today must read the scriptures as though they were something entirely unfamiliar, as though they had not been set before him ready-made, wrote the Jewish scholar Martin Buber. Buber is now getting his wish. Most people of today do read the Old Testament as something entirely unfamiliar. Why bother? This book recounts how I came to stop avoiding and start reading and ultimately loving the Old Testament. I confess that I began with ignoble motives. I read it because I was paid to, as part of my editorial assignment to produce the Student Bible. Long after the Student Bible had been published and stocked on bookstore shelves, however, I kept returning to the Old Testament on my own. My reading experience parallels one I had with William Shakespeare. In a moment of idealism, I made a New Year's resolution to read all 38 of Shakespeare's plays in 1 year. Due to travel, a cross-country move, and other interruptions, I had to extend that deadline. Yet, to my surprise, fulfilling the task seemed far more like entertainment than like work. At first, I had to look up archaic words, concentrate on keeping the character straight, and adjust to the sheer awkwardness of reading plays. I found, though, that as I kept at it and got accustomed to the rhythm and language, these distractions faded, and I felt myself being swept up in the play. Without fail, I look forward to the designated Shakespeare evenings. I expected to learn about Shakespeare's world and the people who inhabited it. I found, though, that Shakespeare mainly taught me about my world. He endures as a playwright because of his genius in probing the hidden recesses of humanity, a skill that gives him appeal in places as varied as the United States, China, and Peru. Several centuries after his death, we find ourselves in his plays. I went through precisely the same process in encountering the Old Testament. From initial resistance, I moved to a reluctant sense that I ought to read the neglected 3/4 of the Bible. As I worked past some of the barriers, much like learning to read Shakespeare, I came to feel a need to read because of what it was teaching me. Eventually, I found myself wanting to read those 39 books, which were satisfying in me some hunger that nothing else had, not even, I must say, the New Testament. They taught me about life with God, not how it was supposed to work, but how it actually does work. The rewards offered by the Old Testament do not come easily, I admit. Learning to feel at home in its pages will take time and effort. All achievements, climbing mountains, mastering the guitar, competing in a triathlon require a similar process of hard work. We persevere because we believe rewards will come. A reader of the Old Testament confronts obstacles not present in other books. For example, I was put off at first by its disarray. The Old Testament does not read like a cohesive novel. It consists of poetry, history, sermons, and short stories written by various authors and mixed up together. In its time, of course, no one conceived of the Old Testament as one book. Each book had its own scroll, and a long book like Jeremiah would occupy a scroll 20 or 30 feet long. A Jewish person entering a synagogue would see stacks of scrolls, not a single book, and aware of their differences would choose accordingly. Indeed, on certain solemn holidays, Jews were only permitted to read from Job, Jeremiah, and Lamentations in order to stay appropriately mournful. The other books might provide too much pleasure. Yet I find it remarkable that this diverse collection of manuscripts, written over a period of millennium by several dozen authors, possesses as much unity as it does. To appreciate this feat, imagine a book begun 500 years before Columbus and just now completed. The Bible's striking unity is one strong sign that God directed its composition. By using a variety of authors and cultural situations, God developed a complete record of what he wants us to know. Amazingly, the parts fit together in such a way that a single story does emerge. The more I persevered, the more passages I came to understand. And the more I understood, the more I found myself in those passages. Even in a culture as secular as the United States, bestsellers such as Care of the Soul by Thomas More and The Cloister Walk by Kathleen Norris reveal a deep spiritual hunger. The Old Testament speaks to that hunger like no other book. It does not give us a lesson in theology with abstract concepts neatly arranged in logical order. Quite the opposite. It gives us an advanced course in the life with God, expressed in a style at once personal and passionate. All right, that ends this week's. We'll see you next week.